things are available if you're interested in going that way. With Gameware, again, the Gameware portal is available to you to answer those questions, but of course, please come see me to ask how Beast, navigation, human IK, or Scaleform works in a bit more detail, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Now, speaking of which, my time slot is up. I think we're going to just take some questions from the floor until the session's over. So I guess the lights will be lifted, because with that, I can't see anybody in the audience. I assume there are people still sat there. But I think we've got a roving mic. So if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. The microphone will come to you. And as soon as it's to you, I think we've got one at the very back left there. So as soon as the mic's with you, please feel free to ask your question, and we'll see if we can help.
I'm more of a programmer than an artist.
Okay.
Whatever limited modeling that I've done is with Blender. So what would my motivation be to move from Blender to MyILT, given that Blender is free and MyILT is not?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a really common question. I get it everywhere I go, because obviously Blender is the free 3D option, and it kind of does everything that you think it would need to do. So MyRLT, and the reason that we're seeing a huge surge of interest in MyRLT is twofold, really. It's about the quality of people that are going to work on your project initially. So anybody that's had games experience are going to be experienced with Maya. So straight away the UI is there for them. The tool sets are as robust as you can imagine they would be with a high-end 3D product such as Maya. So the actual product itself is very easy for anyone familiar in 3D to get into. On the other hand, MyRLT has been geared towards people new to 3D. So with something like Blender, you've got physics and dynamics and particles and hair and all the stuff that Maya would provide you, but adds a lot of bloat and weight and complexity to the UI. So by just focusing the product directly on the needs of an indie developer, you're going to have much simpler to use tools. It's going to be much easier to get into if you're new to 3D. Actually, there's a third reason why MyRLT would be a better choice than Blender, is because if you're investing your time in learning a 3D product, you probably want to be spending your time learning a 3D product where your skills are going to be transferable, or where you can scale up your production, bring in new people, and the people working with you are going to be working with an industry standard. So, if MyRLT is a lower end price point to make it easy for people to do a 3D product or a project, but at some point, your game's going to take off, you're going to have greater ambitions, you might find that you want to really branch out and bring Maya and the entertainment creation suite products like Motion Builder into the fray, so you can work with mocap data easily, and all the things that go around a bigger pipeline tool set. And that's why people are really saying, I want to get into 3D, Blender's there, but I don't really want to spend time learning Blender. And as I get more professional and as we start to do more and more 3D, it's really hard for me to find a skilled professional animator that's prepared to work with a tool that isn't an industry standard for us. So they're the reasons that are coming back to me when I go and see customers. They're not stuff that I'm kind of invented to try and position it accordingly. It's been the feedback coming to me is people are excited when they know that Maya is now open and available to them through the MyRLT product. I hope that answers your question.
I wanted to know for a startup in a studio how cost effective it is, because Maya, the license for the normal Maya is quite costly.
I would have to defer to my sales colleagues for specific pricing. 1/3 was the answer, so yeah, it's yeah. And of course, but the rental offerings, that obviously applies to the pricing of MyRLT as well. So yeah, it can be very, very cost efficient to just bring it in as a 3D product in-house. I think that's it for all the questions. As I say, me and the rest of my sales colleagues for India are available over the next day or so, and we are more than happy to chat to you, even if it's just about our experiences working with other indie dev teams around the world, whether it's pricing specific information or whether it's anything technical about anything that you've seen today. Particularly on the Maya LT side, my friend and colleague over here, Prem, is our Maya application specialist, so he'll be able to answer in lots of detail some of the deeper elements that you might be interested in about that product set specifically. So we're all here, we're all open to you, and all that's left is say thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Nice to talk to you.
So thank you, Kevin. You'll have to come on the stage for a second, please. So is Santanu or Parag Gupta here?
So, good evening, folks. Warm welcome to what is, I think, one of the more difficult sessions, given that I'm probably one of the few persons between you and the start of the weekend, right? Late in the evening. So, as we wait for other people to kind of flow in their tea break, let's get started right away. I think, just generally talking about cloud computing from Amazon Web Services side of the world, I think one thing that's different about this session, which we haven't done before, is we're kind of first time doing this joint session between the AWS cloud side of the business, and my colleague Parag will come in after 30 minutes after I finish off my day to talk about the App Store side of business, which, looking at the developers and the gaming kind of companies here today, should be extremely relevant and exciting in terms of finding how to kind of increase the discoverability and the monetization of your app once it's done. I was actually thinking in the morning, I keep talking in conferences about the hype of cloud computing and how it's been, one of the most overused and abused words in the last few years. But I was thinking, instead of talking technology, given that it's Friday and it's Pune and the start of winter, why not start talking about something that's been creating the headlines in the last 5 days? Anyone guess what this number is? Yeah, potentially seen the last innings of his life, probably, given how India's batting. So I thought I'll start with this, but to kind of be fair to the NASCOM folks, I'll stick to the technology side of things. What I'll do is, well, before that, this is something I get in every customer meeting that I go to, right? I mean, the last 2.5, 3 years that I've been part of Amazon Web Services, I've worked with multiple startups day in and day out, including gaming companies in a big way, and seen them massively scale on a platform, right? And some of the novice customers, especially the enterprise, keep asking us one thing: Amazon, really? What are you here to talk about IT? How many of you here have shopped from Amazon.com? Okay, quite a few. The rest of you, we should meet in the evening to see why you're in shop. Just kidding. But a lot of people don't know this, and those who have shopped might not realize, every time you actually click on the card and shop for stuff, there are, in multiple ways, web services calls going to the backend to Amazon Web Services, on which Amazon.com is actually built, right? Amazon Web Services, which, unlike a lot of people think of, is not excess compute capacity from Amazon.com, but it's a separate entity which was formed about 7.5 years ago. And right from day one, it is a different entity, completely independent of Amazon.com. In fact, we actually happen to treat Amazon.com as one of our customers globally, rather than just looking at them just as a parent company. So from day one, these are the businesses that we are into, broadly speaking. Obviously, Parag will talk about the App Store side of things, which fits into the one of the categories, but we have mainly the retail side, which we started off with 18, 19 years ago. Then we have the seller services, and then the last piece here, this is what we're going to talk about today in the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so, which is the cloud computing or the infrastructure model, and see how kind of gaming companies fit into it and why gaming companies and other internet startups are using it across 190 countries that we have hundreds and thousands of customers. In terms of innovation, right, we strive to be one of the most customer, obsessed company. We strive to be very, very customer-centric company. A reason that for that we are successful in terms of building hundreds of thousands of customers is the innovation that we do every day. And part of the innovation is driven by customers who themselves are innovating on us, right? You talk about the Instagrams of the world, or the Netflix of the world, the Zynga, the Playfish, or the Boomies of the world, the gaming companies, right? Because they're innovative, they kind of push us to ask for services and features which we are pushed to kind of build on, right? And the typical life cycle that we've seen, which you all kind of recognize as a part of your MVP or a minimum viable product as a startup, is you obviously start your startup here. Or if you're talking about India, then an apartment, let's say, in Pune or Bombay, right? Because we don't have a lot of garages in India. Right? And then a lot of customers have actually literally started off here, in India included, and gaming companies included, because their entire server-side processing works on the cloud computing platform. And then you end up building an MVP or a popular game that you're dreaming of, right? This is kind of the first version that most startups take. And then as you kind of progress, you kind of obviously love your game, and so do customers, because everyone loves their MVP in the first version. And the word spreads out. And after a while, everyone starts using it, right? The entire globe knows about it. This is a stage where kind of most startups look at to kind of build. Where do we kind of get, when do we kind of reach that stage where you kind of get those millions or billions of impressions a month? And beyond that, that's when kind of cloud starts to make sense, right? Because then what, right? How do you kind of, how do you kind of solve the challenges of sustaining the scalability when you've actually reached that traffic size? And ensure that your costs aren't really exponentially growing with your infrastructure costs, right? Really bandwidth, compute, storage, and so on and so forth, the various areas. In terms of customers just globally scaling on us, we've seen hundreds of thousands of customers just go down the same thing on the cloud in a pay-per-use mode. And that's why we think the cloud makes sense, because not because we think it makes sense, but our customers keep telling us as to how they've grown with the hundreds of thousands of case studies that we have at worldwide. Most of them, a lot of them are internet startups. A lot of people, when they think about the cloud, obviously think about elastic pay-as-you-go capacity, which is kind of the big tenet of it. But there are other tenets which a lot of customers really are not aware of, or it's really underrated, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But pay-as-you-go and elastic, essentially when you see the earlier slide where you have millions of impressions coming in, this kind of solves the challenges of your cost or having the flexibility of a platform. Another perception that I've seen with a lot of customers is cloud computing is just about compute and storage in a pay-per-use model, that is servers and storage, and that's about it, right? But we have gone way beyond that, right? At Amazon, we don't really categorize ourselves as an IaaS, PaaS, or a SaaS platform, right? Because we are just in a space where we take feedback from customers, try to solve a business problem, and give everything as a service, right? That's the kind of direction we're going. So let's look at 2 or 3 tenets that are kind of, some of them obvious, some of them really underrated. Like elastic capacity, the name sounds obvious, right? But then what a lot of the customers would agree with or realize is elastic capacity is not just adding capacity over a period of time, but immediately real time in a matter of seconds, literally, right? Because let's take this graph as an example, and this is the traditional IT graph which a lot of you must have faced when you run your infrastructure on traditional on-premises hardware, where the blue line is your actual traffic workload which is coming in, and the red line is the hardware or the capacity that you have provisioned, right? Because you obviously need to have kind of a gap between that to provision for your peak capacity. And what tends to happen is, once your peaks come in, unpredictable or predictable, a lot of capacity is wasted, because once you lease hardware, you obviously have to keep it. You can't really sell it and buy it every day. You have to actually lease hardware, even if you're running on virtual machines, you have to plan for capacity. Or you become a victim of your own success, and there are peaks like this, where you kind of end up not being able to serve your customers because it's gone through the roof. Some customers might argue that it's a good problem to have, because we've got more business than we expected. But then from a long-term perspective, it can be harmful. And with the cloud, with scaling techniques which are actually enabled by default, literally free of cost, you can actually have patterns where your server and storage or database or whatever that you're using, infrastructure, follows the curve real time without any intervention at all. And we look at customer references later in the slide deck, where we've seen customers actually go to thousands and thousands of instances automatically without manual intervention. Right? The second piece is pay as you go and pay for what you use. Now, pay as you go is as simple as the term sounds, just like electricity, like the electricity technology, when you switch off a light bulb and you stop paying for it. Similarly, when we have servers and storage on Amazon, you just pay by the hour, literally, or by the MB or KB or by the GB if you're doing storage, and so on and so forth for other services. And when you switch them off, if it's dev test or otherwise, you stop paying for it until you switch them on again. But pay as you go, this model wouldn't be any good if there were long-term commitments and contracts. Right? So we believe in pay as you go not only in terms of pay by the hour, pay by the GB, but also not having any long-term commitments and contracts. Because if you're no good, you kind of run this in a pay as you go model. And after 3 months, you think, you know what, your app isn't working or this platform isn't working for you. And you shut down and you try to move off, and your cloud vendor tells you, oh, by the way, there's like a minimum 6-month blocking period. That's a minimum commitment. There should be no minimum commitments. Another side to it is pay whatever you want to in terms of flexibility, be it the operating system, Be it just using a server or set of servers without using storage if you want, if it's stateless, or just using storage and not using servers. Just use, let's say, email part of it, or just use an application or database and not use other storage mechanisms, and so on and so forth. Because if you start bundling and start having prerequisites for each component, then obviously it doesn't make sense. It's not two players in it. And the last tenet, there are others, but I'm just covering 3 of them, is possibly one of the most underrated tenets that I've seen, unfortunately, even with our existing customers, which is automation. Right? The APIs and the SDKs that you get in the Amazon platform, you can literally automate and customize to whatever extent you can. Right? And I've said this in events before, some of you attended my here. Instagram, right, the famous company that we're all aware of, started off on Amazon Web Services, and even after the Facebook takeovers, continues to run on AWS with the millions and billions of users they have. They, from inception to about recently, had just 3 engineers, right? Literally 3 engineers managing their entire IT infrastructure, including the Facebook app and the launch, serving millions of customers 24/7, right? Just 3 engineers, so where they go. When they were asked as to what their secret was, they mentioned that we have a big 4th engineer working for their company, and that was the cloud. What they meant was the amount of automation that they could do with the cloud and the APIs meant that they really didn't require personally to kind of manage the information. That's kind of the automation that you can do, which is a lot, right? Operational cycles, cost, number of people, time manageability, etc. Just to spend about 2 or 3 minutes in the next few slides for those who aren't. How many of you are aware of AWS from before? Okay. Some of you might not do this. So let me just kind of cover some of the infrastructure that we have for those who are curious. We obviously started off 7.5 years ago as an independent entity of Amazon.com. It started off as an internal project and then kind of branched out into a public, service offering in the form of APIs or in other forms and shapes that we allow you to access services. The blue boxes that you see are our data centers or regions that we call are across the world, on which thousands of customers host their applications and service day in and day out. You can actually literally go back today, and I'll cover this towards the end, create a free account, start spinning up small servers on it in any of these regions that I look, the blue boxes that you see, the 8 regions, and start playing around with infrastructure as you wish, right? Literally it's that simple. The only one that is not available to your console would be the red box, which is the Gov Cloud, which is for the US federal customers like White House and the recovery.gov and the treasury.gov and so on. But for every other 8 regions will be actually available on the console. And you can actually choose one or multiple of those to deploy your infrastructure. Each of these regions by default come with at least 2 or more what we call as availability zones, which are nothing but data centers. But data centers kind of segregated from each other, right, to actually give you the leverage of building highly available applications on the cloud. A lot of customers ask me, what's my DR strategy in the cloud, right? What if my DR goes down? So the DR strategy is that there is no DR, but you build highly available applications instead of building 2 data centers, which is primarily DR, and spending double the cost. The beauty of Amazon pricing is that you actually pay for what you consume, and that does not include data centers, right? If you're running 5 servers split across 2 data centers, you just pay for 5 servers, irrespective of how often you're running them or how many data centers you're running them across. So that kind of helps you spread your infrastructure across multiple data centers or even multiple regions. There are some global customers who run across global continents without paying addition, and to serve their kind of end customers nearest to them, whichever their market might be. And lastly, we have CDN or Content Delivery Network, which is basically our edge locations. The most exciting part for Indian customers was this is the first time we launched infrastructure in India, in Mumbai and Chennai back in the end of July. So a lot of our even gaming customers, for example, kind of have their source in Singapore and then serve their app downloads and their images, etc. of their site via the CDN in Mumbai and Chennai for their Indian customers. And so on and so forth across the other 46 edge locations that we have across the globe as well, depending on which region or continent that you're serving customers. This is kind of a screenshot of our services. I'm obviously not going to cover most of them because I can't put them in one slide. There are more to this. We have about 40 plus services, including some that we released day before yesterday. But if you actually see this and tie it to my statement that I made earlier that we don't categorize ourselves as an IaaS, PaaS or a SaaS provider. The reason for that is this, right? About 7 years ago, we started with kind of the bottom services, which is EC2, which is our server as a service in a pay-per-use model, Linux and Windows support, and then storage of different forms as well, where you charge you by the GPU. But then after that, as our customer base has grown, we've literally come up with things like database as a service, NoSQL as a service, CDN as a service, big data as a service, data warehouse as a service, and so on and so forth. The list goes on. Each of these can be actually used independently without having any prerequisite to the other service, and can be shut down at any point in time of the year without continuing to pay. And that's what's actually resulted in us having hundreds of thousands of customers across the globe. Right? We actually follow the business model of our parent company, Amazon.com, which is really a mass volume, low margin business, which is, we like to believe, unique to us versus other technology companies. We don't really have the top 100 or 50 enterprise customers which we focus on. It's really a mass volume business, which kind of helps us lower costs every now and then. These are some of the Indian customers on us. Again, I'm not including every one of them, and I have a separate kind of slide at the end to kind of talk to some of the gaming companies on us specifically. But as you can see, it's kind of a fair mix of startups, internet apps, enterprises, SME companies, partners, and so on and so forth. And this is just a small snapshot. There are hundreds and thousands of you. Literally 8,000 plus customers in India as of today as we speak, and constantly. Lastly, obviously we have a partner ecosystem. Can't be complete without that. Now you might argue that everyone has a partner ecosystem. What's so special about this? If you look at the right side of the screen, some of the technology partners, and some of them might have spoken today earlier. The good thing about this is we've actually worked with these guys over the years to kind of not only certify their applications to run on us, but more importantly, certify the licensing model of this. So let's say today you spin up a Windows 2008 server on EC2 with Amazon. You don't have to have a separate kind of relationship with Microsoft to buy the CALs for user licenses or buy licenses for them. The per hour cost of the infrastructure includes the licensing cost and unlimited CALs. Same for SQL Server, same for Oracle, and so on and so forth. The list goes on. Red Hat, SUSE, and other operating systems and their products. And we're constantly kind of increasing to work with other ISPs as well, including SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, etc., who are already certified, by the way, to kind of bring this on-demand model on the way, so that your licensing also is on-demand, right? So this is actually done, right? You get fully supported high technology partner solutions on the platform without having to worry about the licensing cost. This, obviously, all this that we talk about has resulted in mass volume and low margin as we speak. And it's funny when we speak about it, but it's actually ridiculous the number of times we have to actually reduce pricing, just like Amazon.com, right? The prices always go down, which is not something you typically hear in the IT space.